Hello, and welcome to episode, I think it's 7. Part 2 of 2. Yeah, I've not checked it, but I think it's 7. If not, it's just the next part with Rhys and Arielle, really. So yeah, welcome to part 2, episode 7 of the Mythilosophy podcast. This one's just going to be a short, sharp one because I've got a lot of stuff to do in terms of getting ready for the bike trip, and I'm off to Iceland to see a friend, and going with a friend, and it's going to be a beautiful trip because we last went, I think it was 7 years ago when we actually first met in Asia. So fingers crossed as well. That's why I was a bit rushed because I haven't packed yet. So I'm hopefully taking the podcast stuff, and we're going to do a podcast with him because it'll be a very good podcast. Yeah, he's a very, very lovely dude. So yeah, this one's going to be a short, sharp one. I've fully moved back down. Well, I've fully taken my stuff back from Fringe now. Because Dee and I went our separate ways during the COVID time, and we had a lovely time in Somerset, lovely time with Dee, and it's just lovely now that we've got this beautiful friendship that we're now starting. And a big shout out to Joe and Adam, who came down all the way down to Froome in the evening to help me with my stuff and moving it back. It was just like I felt very, very humbled to know such lovely people that would go to such depths, and so yeah, I'm just very honoured and very grateful for your efforts. So if you listen to this, thank you very much. In this episode, we talk about living in San Antonio, Texas, which is where Arielle is originally from. We talk about the community. We talk about the community of poets and just community in general. And we also talk about there's quite a lot to talk about the Fringe, actually, which is quite a good topic to discuss, and about the different styles of what goes into making a Fringe a Fringe. And then we have some advice for like artists or poets, photographers. So if you're starting out, listen to this, and it's really good stuff. I hope you can take something away and use it in your lives. The intro song last week was actually a band that Rhys was in called Milo Bean. I'm unsure of how long they were together or whatever it is, but yeah, they're really good. So I hope you enjoyed that. And this week we're going to start the podcast with some poetry from Arielle. She has a wonderful, wonderful way with words, and it's a shame that you can't actually see the performance, because that it just makes it even more special. So I'll put links in so you can actually see the performance on YouTube. But yeah, we'll just have the dialogue from it. Dive into it, enjoy it, and I'll catch you soon. Thank you. Ciao, ciao, bye. What was the place that you said that you lived for a while, and you said was real like a nice hub of Texas?
San Antonio,
Okay,
Texas.
what was that like? What's that like?
God, it is a city full of characters. Everyone you meet has just a massive personality. You might not like them much, but they are definitely no boring people there. Yeah, that was the place. I came of age there. I turned 18 before I moved there, but then I turned 21 there, which is the drinking age. So I went to university, kind of like became a people in that city, learned how to bartend and wait tables in that city. Yeah, had my first real heartbreak in that city. It was a good time. Learned how to swing dance.
Just want to put a little guitar piece there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I should have that.
Yeah.
Next time. I might cut it out and just put a little ding 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 ding. That's not really
Yeah.
hardcore music actually, but yeah.
It was like San Antonio is beautiful. The art scene is incredible, and
Really?
it gets largely ignored because it is not dominated by white people like in LA, New York, and Austin. Doesn't really get the funding because conservative governments don't really like giving arts funding to people. But it's thriving anyway.
At least you have an arts department, you know.
Oh no, we don't.
Oh really?
No.
The federal one.
The National Endowment for the Arts.
Yeah.
It is 1/100th of 1% of the national
GDP.
budget.
Wow.
And the current government is lobbying to nix it all together.
We just rolled we have a federal Department of the Arts, which has always been given maybe a 10th to 100th of the sporting grant allocation money to give out to artists throughout the year and do positive things within the arts community, which is a broad thing on its own, just having a Department of the Arts. But they've just announced there was a study done that said that there was a bit too much spending in government, which is how they've gone from a positive to a negative in 2 short terms. But in the spending, the recommendation was that they cut some of the state departments and instead they cut the federal arts department and rolled it into the Department of Infrastructure and Transport. So
What?
So now the federal arts department is being overseen by the Minister for Transport.
Oh, that makes absolute sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, because
Really?
people travel to go see art.
Well,
People
also
travel to see art.
The Wheels on the Bus is a timeless classic. And I don't think it's had enough credit. I mean...
Is it an Australian classic?
No.
One of ours. It's one of ours.
Is it? Is it an English tune?
No idea. Probably.
We've got the Wiggles.
What, the Wiggles on the bus?
Well, no, we've got the band the Wiggles.
Oh, right. Okay.
And they did Big Red Car, if I'm thinking of transport songs.
Okay. How's that go?
Beep, beep, chugga, chugga, big red car. Which, I mean, people don't write like that anymore.
If only there was funding for that, then, we might get some...
Well, I'm saying this is the kind of music we can have in a new infrastructure-led arts department.
Yeah, only transportation songs. Okay. Yellow Submarine, maybe. I mean, that, So is it particularly difficult as artists to make livings via those kind of stumbling and hurdling blocks? Would you say?
I think in real talk, you have to redefine what you consider making a living with as an artist. I think, honestly, to be able to kind of eat and have accommodation and not be homeless, you, as an artist, you have to do a lot of different sacrifices anywhere in the world, I would say. And I think that means that my definition of making a living would be quite different to someone like an Australian doctor
Interesting.
or an Australian politician's definition of making a living.
That's a very, very good way of putting it, actually. Would you concur with that, or have you got a...
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I, like, the last time that I was, like, fully making a living and surviving off of the money that I was making as an artist was when I was around the time that Rhys and I met, actually. But I had lucked out and found a very, very cheap room in one of the loveliest share houses that I think I've ever even heard of, much less been in. Just a lot of communal meals, a lot of like open communication. Everyone respected each other. Everyone liked each other. We had a great time living together. And I think I was paying something like $65 a week.
US dollars. American dollars.
Australian dollars.
Australian dollars, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was nuts.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I never wanted to leave. Especially since I really loved my housemates there too. But yeah, so with that, I was able to, like, just with that, being able to afford accommodations, like, I was living off of probably about 500 Australian a month, which equates to about, like 300 euro a month?
Mm-hmm.
And I was living on it, and I was happy. Like, I'd go out, if I went out, I would buy maybe one beer, or, like, a glass of wine or two. But like I've never really been one who like needed alcohol to have a good time.
Yeah, right.
And then like if someone like if a friend had like come into some money, like, oh yeah, I'll get a round of drinks for people. Like that's great.
Lovely.
And
It
like,
sounds like a real like community kind of.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean like the poetry communities that I've stumbled into, and again I say this word, like it was very much like accidentally like wobbling here and there and then finding people by accident who were really amazing. But the poetry communities that I've stumbled across on every continent have all been incredible people. Okay. Like they've given me couches to live on when I like had to leave Australia and like went to Southeast Asia and like met some poets there, met in Singapore, went to Malaysia.
I suppose you would have that shared kind of understanding of like, you know, there's peaks and troughs. There's times where you're successful. There's times when you're kind of okay, when you're not, and you need that kind of support. And
yeah,
you know.
And like when I was living in Melbourne, I had like poets from like Northern Ireland come through and like crash on my couch, and so it all kind of like goes in and out and around, and everyone in the community sort of takes care of each other to an extent.
Yeah, beautiful.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's how we ended up in Cork when we flew into Dublin. It's like, oh, like our friends, because that's what it is really. You just make friends with people who do the same thing you do. And they're like, we're going to this fun thing. You want to come with us? Like, yeah, sure.
Well, do poets, I suppose they differ in style, but is there a similarity in terms of like a nationality of a poet? Is there any, not conformity, but is there any?
Are you saying like would a UK poet have a certain style that maybe a US poet would?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
Or
a
Northern Irish poet, or
there's definitely tendencies.
Yeah. Like in a very broad sense, I would say so, but that's just because like different styles and trends in art move differently through different places.
I would also add that a large part of performance art can often be dictated by where the money is in that field. So slam poetry is probably one of the most reliable ways to make money. So slam poetry depends on audience votes, which means you need to be doing stuff that the audience wants to hear, and that can make a big difference when you change geographically between audiences. Like UK audiences tend to prefer comedy and rhyming, and American audiences tend to prefer, would you say, like race, politics,
really just anything political, and politically relevant.
Yeah.
Which doesn't lend a whole lot of leeway if you're not necessarily writing every single poem you ever that pops into your head about politics, or including some aspect of politics in it.
Yeah, definitely. Politics, especially like sex politics, do very well with audiences in Australia. I would say. I don't know. Would you agree?
Yeah, sex and race.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, because you were saying that you found it quite surprising that the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh was solely sort of mostly comics, weren't you?
Yeah,
or something.
That was really weird to me because comedy doesn't really count as Fringe anymore. Like it's quite well known what it is and what you're going. If you're going to go and sit down in a venue where they're doing stand-up comedy, like you kind of know what you're in for, more or less. Like, you know, at the very basic, you're going to get a person standing up in front of you telling you things to try and make you laugh.
I don't know if I fully agree. I think there's such a broad scope of what you can talk about and how you deliver it. And I think comedy now is very different to the form of comedy that we were listening to in the 80s or in earlier decades. But I think I get what you're saying. Like, the setup is predictable. Yeah. Like the format of the show, the run of the show, compared to a theatre show, which can have so many more set pieces to it, and delivery styles, especially if it's an ensemble cast. It's probably a lot. Would you say it's a lot more obvious what a single person is probably likely to do on stage?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that's not to say, like, I've seen some really incredible stand-up, or I guess, see, I would say I've seen circus acts that include stand-up that are super insane and shocking. Like, yeah, that's Fringe, because like I had no idea that was what was coming.
Okay.
Would you think? How would you feel about something like Hannah Gadsby's Nanette as a Fringe style of comedy?
Fringe style of comedy, yes. Fringe style of art, not so much. Like, I mean, art, as we've been saying, is a pretty broad scope. And I think if you're going to market a festival that is at the fringes of the arts, having something that is honestly, like, if people say like I'm a comedian, people have a better and like more, I don't know, it's not as unexpected as when you tell people ask like, what do? You say I'm a comedian. They're like, oh wow, tell us a joke. You tell people you're a poet, and they're like, are we in 1400 something or other? Which is an actual thing someone said to me once.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm a poet. And they were like, what are we, the 1800s? What do you do?
What are you, Tennyson's cousin? Or
Yeah. And so I like had to like actually explain, like, so I get up in front of people and I read the things that I write to them and they give me money for it. Sometimes.
Would you say it's like a one-person rap battle?
And that's not to say that poetry is at the fringe of performing arts either. But yeah, like considering some of the like just the insane theatrical things I've seen with people like opening up their hands on stage with a razor blade, like that's a bit more fringe, I think.
Or throwing dog food that they've taken out of their body and thrown it into the crowd.
Oh, there we go.
That was a particularly wild mofo. I was working as a photographer, and I was walking around, and a lot of the a lot of the performances aren't listed on the program, and so it's all kind of discovery based, which is amazing. It's an incredible festival, and someone pulled me out of the crowd, like, you've got to go see what's happening on the stage in the Odeon. And I was like, really? And I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, ran in with the camera, got to the front of the crowd, and do you want me to tell you what I saw? Because it's quite graphic.
Okay.
You can't not tell us at this point. If he doesn't like it, he'll edit it out later.
All right, there was a lady.
They're staying in, so you can.
There was a lady on a table. I'd come halfway through the performance.
Dirty Matt.
Yeah, but I'd missed the first half, and she was naked on a table, fully lubed up, like just covered in oil, and she was fisting herself with dog food and then throwing it into the crowd.
Really? That's something.
That's Fringe.
That's Fringe.
That's Fringe, yeah.
Mofo's more Fringe than the Fringe Festival.
I mean, I've never been to the Fringe Festival, but Mofo's pretty Fringe. I've seen some very out. There was one lady one year that started doing a sexy dance to country music, which is quite funny. And then,
also possible.
Yeah.
Giving her ideas
valid.
Now.
Some very like ragtime keys kind of country music, and then
careful what you say about my people's music.
threw her hat off, and then instead put a cowhide on her back and started rubbing blood on her chest while mooing and crawling around the. And this was a room about the size of this kitchen. We were all sitting there, and the door was closed, so we watched the whole thing.
When your brain just sort of sends into like over. You're trying to imagine what you just described. I'm just literally imagining a lady just mooing. Yeah, that's pretty out there. That is cutting edge stuff. Not quite your prim and proper. So I went to the doctor's one day and. I had a steering wheel down my pants, and he said it's driving me nuts. Yeah, that really wouldn't go. That's complete polar opposites, but great.
Yeah.
But I think that's what you need. You need people like that are taking these stupendous risks and doing things that are just completely outside the box. Because if everyone was all insular and all really like, in the box, then it'd be a pretty tight box and a pretty boring.
I think I'm just gonna be the advocate here for in the box.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think we're getting enough in the box. At work. It all just sounds very sexual, doesn't it? I'm so sorry.
I thought you were doing that on purpose.
Yeah, same.
I just haven't slept, and it's just it's not. My phrasing is off, but just. When was the last time you saw something that was just completely in the realms of possible? I only see things on the Fringe now. I think my Fringe is a lot longer than your Fringe.
I mean, potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially not actually.
Not my real life. I'm probably a week shy of having matching haircuts with you.
My Fringe is definitely longer than your Fringe. We were today going around the flea market and there was a guy, and genuinely he shouted over, "Nice hair," and I thought, "Oh, thank you," and then I was like, "No, I'm bald now." We're talking about your lovely locks.
Sorry about you. Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, definitely got me now." You touched on photography.
Yes.
How did you know you had the kind of the guile for that, and what would you say for any kind of people who kind of like photographs and just really into what sort of advice would you give for those people?
Sure. Well, I think I'm an outlier. I'm a strange case study because I've managed to make a career out of something I have no talent or natural gift in.
How honest of you.
I was working as a journalist, and I was a writing journalist, and I wanted to be a TV journalist. And I was working for Al Jazeera at the time, and they suggested that I should probably learn how to use a camera as a hobby. And they recommended I get a cheap camera that had been out for a few years by then. So I got this cheap camera and I started learning that. And then I moved back to Australia and I was covering music festivals. So I was taking photos at music festivals and writing about them. And it was just, honestly, it was a survival thing that I started taking photos because I'd be going to these 3-day music festivals where the art would finish at 3 a.m. And the story would have to be filed by 8 and then it would start again at 10 a.m.
Wow.
And if I was just taking photos, it was just a lot easier.
Cool.
Just to file my stories. So I just started taking photos more and more and more. And I used to work with other photographers. And so there was this kind of transition period where I was working with another photographer. So I was doing the words and the photos and they were doing the photos until the editors started putting my photos in as well as the other person's. And I was like, oh, okay, well, they're kind of liking these photos. And then just natural attrition of where I'm from in Tasmania, it's very hard for artists to make a living, so they move. So I think the photographer I was working with left and it was just me. And
come in.
Someone's knocking. And so I just started...
Don't you know we're doing a podcast. Didn't you see the siren? What's that thing? The on air.
The on-air light.
Goodness.
And yeah, I just basically when they left, I started just taking photos, and then I started getting writers to work with me, and then I started doing more video, and then I was working in TV, so I started directing a lot more, and it worked. It basically worked out that I've made a career in something that I really enjoy, but I'm often looking at people's photos on their phone, being like, that's a lot better than what I could take. That's a very good eye. Like that is amazing composition. So I guess my advice would be that you can do it. They say that the first 10,000 photos you'll take are shit. And so it's just like anything really. You just keep practicing, reading up on it. And if you like it, it's not a chore. To keep doing. And so I kind of stuck with it just because I enjoy it. And it's a lot of fun to kind of be up the front taking photos of amazing artists.
Yeah. That what you said about the 10,000 photos thing, that triggered into a little bit. There's that famous quote that says, to really be a master of something, you have to do it like 10,000 times.
Yeah.
So I think that feeds into the the first 10,000 you may take maybe shit, but the fact you've taken them, the fact you've learned, and the fact you've discovered and faltered and made mistakes and tried and not tried and see what doesn't work, I think.
Yeah, I think if you like the photos you take, or if someone else likes the photos you take, there is nothing to stop you being a photographer.
Okay, I like that. And what about your creative kind of process? How does that kind of mold itself or come about? How does that?
Well, for me, I don't know. I think, well, the most I ever did to like really push having a career as a poet was show up to everything. Like every open mic, every slam, every reading, even if I wasn't actually reading there, just show up.
Interesting.
And yeah, like honestly, like with the number of poetry nights that happen regularly in Melbourne alone, like going to everything every week for a year, like it's basically like doing a job. Like you show up to like sometimes they'll be on 9 things in a single week, and you have to like make the call, like which one do I want to go to tonight, because there's 3 different ones. And like other weeks there's like there's like one thing on Monday night and that's it. So and then but yeah, just showing up and like just keep going even if you don't want to go. It's like I could just stay in tonight, watch movies with my housemates, which I definitely loved doing back then, still do, but it's like but instead of that, I'll just go to this poetry thing. And it helped a lot because my best friend, who's also a poet, the one who lived in Dublin, she moved to Melbourne about 3 weeks after I did on the same year-long working holiday visa. So we really kept each other accountable. It's like, hey, you going to the thing tonight? I was like, yep. You want to show it together? Hell yeah, let's do it. Like we'd meet up and like grab a cheap dinner somewhere beforehand and then go. So I think having someone be accountable with you whose company you just absolutely enjoy to the fullest, that's a really easy way to get into really any sort of scene, poetry or otherwise. But yeah, just showing up, contributing in whatever way you can. And then I was really lucky and won a few really big slams.
Did you?
Yeah, I was the national champion for Victoria and the Victorian champion for Australia in 2016.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
The Sydney Opera House.
What's that? You what?
She performed 3 years in a row at the Sydney Opera House.
Serious? Fuck, how was that?
Oh, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It's the first thing I ever remember learning about Australia after the fact that it existed.
Yeah,
like, and there's the Sydney Opera House.
Koala, Sydney Opera House.
Here's a picture of it, even before koalas. And then I was like, what? Yeah, but I mean, and that's kind of the thing. Like slam, like you can put all of the talent and hard work and everything into it, but I mean, at the end of the day, slam really comes down to luck and how well you know your audience.
Okay.
And I just happen to be really, really lucky on a couple of big slams.
Okay.
I've also lost a lot of slams.
Worth mentioning.
I think the craziest thing for me coming in to watch Arielle compete in slams is it's one of the only professions I've ever seen in the world where the people judging you are random people from the audience.
Right.
So they normally, like most places in the world, will like throw something, like throw lollies or something to 5 people in the audience.
Oh, that's just Australia.
Or 3 people, you know, like, but you'd choose random judges, right? Yeah. And so those people will give a score out of 10, and then the person with the highest score from these judges wins. Can't think of a single other profession where you have non-experts judging the craft. You know, like even in scoring things like the Olympics, those are trained professionals that know what they're looking for. But in poetry, it can be a really variable, you know, because everyone's carrying around their own personal biases. And especially for something like American poetry, like slam poetry, which is so politically charged. If you have a different political opinion to the person doing the poem,
of course,
there's a very good chance you're not going to score them as high as maybe the poem deserves. We actually ran a different poetry night in Australia because of that, which was a different style of doing it, where only the poets voted. So everyone that competed got a single vote, which they anonymously put in, and then it just worked. It was awesome because we just were like, we had this system set up where if there was a case of a tie, Arielle as the MC would decide the winner.
Completely arbitrarily.
And we never had to do it. We never once had anything close to a tie. I remember we had a 16-year-old girl. We had 9 poets perform. The piece also had to be brand new. And this 16-year-old girl won by like 6 votes.
Wow. 16-year-old girl. Okay.
Yeah. And like
Bloody
some of
hell.
these poets were in their 70s. They'd been doing it for pretty much their whole life. And it was just, I guess it's also ties back into when there's not much money into it, the community tends to really take care of each other a bit more. As much as that is a blanket statement, that has been my experience.
Fabulous. I mean, thank you both very, 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 very much for doing this.
Thank you for putting a roof over our heads and feeding us, and just generally like showing us a great time around
bless
Froome.
You're an astonishingly talented tour guide. We've had a wonderful time. I didn't expect to see a cider house with a Banksy in it, or the Glastonbury tour, one of my favourite views in the world now.
Oh wow!
So,
Interesting. Yeah.
thank you for taking us all around this lovely part of the country of yours.
Beyond a pleasure, man. And thank you for coming to see us and just on the whim, just agreeing to do this because I didn't think we were gonna get the chance to do it, but we did. So
that's great.
Yeah,
Our pleasure.
Really appreciate your time and
Great.
Thank
and your
you.
friendship and everything. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, where do we find you? For your have you got a website? Have you got a thing? You know, have you got a place?
If you Google Arielle Cottingham poetry, you can see a lot of my stuff on YouTube. I also have a Facebook page, which is Arielle Cottingham. Pretty easy.
I'll put little links in the.
And I'm photography is Rhys Anderson Media on Facebook, or for video and photography work, it's quicklimearts.com. So quicklime, like the ingredient in concrete.
Fabulous. Both beautiful people, and once again, thank you so much. I love you both. Mwah. Grazie mille, grazie mille. Prego.
That's a very good show. Thank you very much. I think
The sun's on my side today. I got a lease of life, I feel okay. Need to call around, get them all out, jump in the car and get on our way. Cause there's love and the strength in numbers. They can try, but they're never gonna run us down. Speakers loud, it's like we're on a come up. Fifth gear, but they're never gonna race us down. I'm alive on a high, blue skies, there's nothing better. Hands up, we're on a ride, hold tight, we're laughing together. Ooh, we'll light it up, and ooh, we can't be stopped. And oh, can't hear us coming. Oh, we take off and keep it running, running. We take off and keep it running. Oh. Take a stop at the riverside, crack 'em open, pass around the light. Breathe it in and out, bring our guards down. Yeah, this is ours for the day and the night. Cause there's love and the strength in numbers. They can try, but they're never gonna run us down. Speakers loud, it's like we're on a come up. Fifth gear, but they're never gonna race us down. I'm alive on a high, blue skies, there's nothing better. Hands up, we're on a ride, hold tight, we're laughing together. Ooh, we'll light it up, and ooh, we can't be stopped. And oh, you can't hear us coming. Oh, we take off and keep it running, running. We take off and keep it running.